So now I'm really following. Remember those exercises? Maybe you've done them in workshops where you have to close your eyes or something and fall backwards into someone. It's like trust building. I don't think I was ever very good at that. Somehow I trust Zazen. I trust falling down to earth. Maybe it's because I trust the earth more than I trust people. But anyway, we won't go down those roads. We learned something about everything. And we have been in Sangha for the last month or so, journeying through forests of every color, awakening with koans with Joan Sutherland. Joan, I'll keep repeating this because I keep realizing it, is that her tradition is Robert Aiken's tradition, and the way that she meets koans is different than the way Soto Zen and the way I've been trained. Our primary practice is Zazen. Their primary practice and her primary practice is koans. So there's a way that it feels like she's entered them and she can play in them in a way that I haven't experienced through my particular practice. So it's very valuable. I'm learning a lot from her. So I'm going to start with, I want to read a little bit. Chapter 18, Taxonomies of the Radiant. The deep story of the koans is awakening. Awakening is a close translation of the Sanskrit word bodhi, the root of Buddha. It's also the root of bodhicitta, awakening, the heart of compassion. Bodhisattva, one who is awakened to the heart of compassion. Of all the synonyms for awakening, the one that comes closest to the koan experience is the Chinese term for intimate. Intimacy evokes warmth and interest, seeing things as they actually are and caring about them, and it happens in relationship. So she brings it forward towards the koan, in the koan tradition, but in our Zazen tradition, intimacy is coming into relationship with forms and feelings and sensations and impulses and our conditioning and the edges of our own skin, and what happens when we begin to be touched and let go of those edges and meet with the quote other, when the world touches us and we touch it, and when we fall into it and it falls into us. There is no relationship is, one might say, the name of the game. And many of us entered and probably continue to enter spiritual practice because we would really like to avoid that part of it. We'll just thank you very much. I'll just sit on my cushion and I'll do what the bell tells me to do. And I'm sure that I can wake up here and that person next to me, that's really nice, that person's there, but it doesn't have so much to do with me. It's sort of a solo heroic journey. I think Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching that the Buddha of this time is the Sangha has some really deep wisdom and guidance for what we need in this time. We can't keep being solo beings doing this alone. The Chinese term has associations not only with kinship and affection, but also wonderfully with doing something in person, experiencing it for yourself. We become intimate with the things of the world, and we become intimate with vastness. This intimacy grows over time, and it deepens suddenly too, when all at once the thicket of brambles around us falls away, and nothing is between our skin and the skin of everything else. The porousness of skin, flesh, bones, and marrow, breathing and being breathed. Awakening is a path we're walking from first breath to last, and probably before and after that. It is never done, never finished. And how we do it, what this path is for each one of us, is unique. The preciousness of having received a human life. My path of awakening isn't going to look like your path of awakening, although, of course, the root and the ground, we are all falling into the same emptiness. We are all falling in love with life as it is. And it's unique and particular. Enlightenment refers to a specific thing, an opening. Well, in her tradition, enlightenment is an opening that is profound, transformative, an experience of vastness and the insubstantiality of the self. It changes us through an experience of awe and a kind of insightful clarity. We are awakening, and the world is awakening us each moment. Living with a sense of awe and wonder is to live in being awake. But then she says, coupled with enlightenment is endarkenment. At the center of any luminous experience, what we find is a well so deep with waters so dark that there's no penetrating it, no sense of where or whether it ends. Endarkenment begins with a humbling realization of an unknowable mystery that's at the heart of everything. And it unfolds with a growing ease of not knowing, an appreciation of the rich, invisible medium in which everything lives. Enlightenment often has a sense of aspiration, of going above, can be a confusion and a trap we all fall into. Endarkenment of being willing to fall into the world and to fall into mystery and to fall into not knowing over and over. She says endarkenment puts us right up against the enigma of the depths of a human life. In the midst of the wonder, how much cruelty and sorrow there is, how bruised and broken all that streaming light can be up close. So acting, responding to this in some way is also essential to awakening. Our awakening belongs not just to us, but to the whole world. I will send you Earthling Manuel's new book, Opening to Darkness, just arrived. When I return in May, we'll be returning to this and the theme of darkness in endarkenment. That's what Avalokiteshvara knows. So it's like reaching the beautiful koan. It's like reaching for a pillow in the dark or in the night. What is the body, heart, mind, the intuitive body, heart, mind that knows how to feel in the dark? Now I'm going to share a couple of koans. Here's a koan. What is the way? What is the way? What are we doing here? What is this awakening, this enlightenment, this endarkenment? What was it we all think we're doing anyway? The response is, a clear-sighted person falls into a well. A clear-sighted person falls into a well. She says, when I first heard this koan, I burst out laughing. Because of course, all the koan practice, all the zazen practice in the world won't save you from making mistakes. I am very sorry. Nothing is going to save you from yourself. Dogen famously said, life is one constant mistake. Really, everything we do is a mistake because we can't possibly know all the results of our choices. I watched my dear son and his partner make vows, and you know they're going to make mistakes. And you know it's going to be an amazing journey of awakening and endarkenment, and that everything and nothing will happen, and they will keep falling into each other and into the world. Of course, how in the world do you do anything new? It's a risk, moment after moment of don't know. In an absolute sense, there's no way to get any decision right. So the question becomes more like deciding on the most beautiful, thoughtful, and generous mistake you can make under the circumstances, and then paying attention to what happens. What a beautiful, to make the most thoughtful, generous mistake you can make in each moment. What is that? Wells are what happens. We are surprised, ambushed, sometimes by events. The ground that seems solid under our feet suddenly gives way, and we make a choice yesterday we didn't know existed. Life, it turns out, is full of wells and potholes and interesting portals, and sometimes being clear-sighted means falling into them. Sometimes being clear-sighted means falling into them. Notice where you hold your breath. Not that hole. I thought I was going this way. Sometimes falling into them is the most generous thing you can do. People you care about are in trouble. A planet is in trouble. Do you cross the street or do you fall in? This is fearless practice. This is generous practice. This is kind practice. This is don't know practice. This is feeling our way in the dark practice. This is saving all beings practice, is offering our lives moment after moment to don't know. And the willingness to make generous, thoughtful mistakes. Some people, maybe you, maybe me, some people spend a lot of time at the lip of the well, peering over, dropping stones in to see how deep it is, trying to find a way around the opening. We know this place, right? I know this place. Yeah, well, I think I'll just go around that today, and then it's a surprise when it's there tomorrow too. But that's part of the process also. Sometimes we think we're not ready, that we need to get our lives together or learn to repel. This has its own pain. If a well presents itself, which mistake do you make? If a well presents itself, which mistake do you make? Try doing walking meditation consciously and to somehow eliminate the part of the falling. You wouldn't move. You couldn't move. And you're moving on a spinning earth that's spinning in space. How do we just breathe and entrust ourselves over and over to each moment? So there's a wonderful koan, some of you may know it, about Layman Pang and his daughter, Ling Xiao. She's walking with her father. She loves her father. He was a very revered lay person, and they loved each other very much. She loved him very much. And one day he tripped and fell. And her immediate response was to throw herself down next to him. Unhesitatingly, she just threw her body to the ground right next to him. And he said to her, what are you doing? And she said, I saw you fall, so I'm helping. I think what an amazing thing that is. We see someone fall, we see ourselves fall, all the ways we pull away, all the ways we judge, but just to just get down next to, out of compassion and love, of what's it like down here? I'm just right here with you, and we'll see what happens next. That's a very different response. We know, I used to be a therapist. The admonition is, if somebody's in a hole, don't throw yourself in the hole. That's not helping somebody. You actually do need, there's some wisdom about staying at the top of the hole, and then you can help and find a different way. But there's also, I think, something very beautiful is when someone falls, notice how much we just want to stay back. That's not me. Sorry, that person who's homeless on the street, not me. Something must have happened to make you fall that way. Figure it out. What if we're curious and have a sense of wonder? That's a very different way to respond. And then she tells another story. I like this one a lot. I like that one too. Then there's Muso Soseki. I've never heard this one, who went off into the mountains to concentrate completely on his meditation. One night, he finally decided to go to bed after sitting in his garden until late. He didn't bother to light his lantern because he knew the way back, even in the dark. As he stood up, he put his hand out to steady himself on a wall that was supposed to be there. Do you ever do this at night? Get up in the middle of the night? Think the walls are there and they're there, but they're not there. This feeling our way in the dark. He put his hand out to steady himself on a wall that was supposed to be there, but it wasn't there, and he just simply fell over. And he just kept falling all the way through, right into emptiness. Falling and letting go and letting go. And then do you know what he did? He started to laugh. And the laughter didn't stop for the longest time. The poignancy and tenderness of all the ways that we hold ourselves up, all the assumptions about who we think we are and what's going to be there, and all of the shock and awe when suddenly the ground falls out. And what happens in that moment when we let go into the fall, into the vast unknown. Lifetime after lifetime, we fall through the universe, through solar systems and interstellar gas clouds, and now we're falling together through a little planet in one of those solar systems. We find that it's made of carbon and hydrogen, tenderness and regret, light and dark and twilight. It may not be like this everywhere. Life as a molecule in one of those interstellar glass clouds might be ecstatic, surfing the currents of space. Astronomers say that when clouds bump into each other, they make a sound like chiming. Do you know that? Subtle sounds. When clouds bump into each other, they make a sound like chiming. And how amazing the clouds also bump into each other. We think it's just us human beings. We know it's not always ecstasy and chiming here. The invitation this particular world extends is a complicated one. But in the big picture, we're falling not through solitary wells, but we are always falling together. We are always falling together. I think sometimes the climate crisis, there's so much fear, and there should be fear. But then we hold our breath and we get scared. What if we're all willing to just continue falling through time and space together? Willing to stay connected with ourselves and each other and the next breath and the wonder and the not knowing. I think sometimes if the whole world is going off the edge of a cliff, then I'll just fall off the edge of the cliff with everyone. And maybe before we all fall off the edge of the cliff, by being willing to just take the next step and the next step and to not know and to fall down and to ask how our neighbor is and to ask how the people are who are already being affected by climate change, socioeconomic. Maybe together we'll find something new. So this awakening, this enlightenment, this endarkenment is each of our responsibility. It's our joy. It arises out of sorrow. It arises out of compassion. One day, we know, we will fall completely through this world back into the darkness and whatever comes next. We are all completely in this together. So let's remember to breathe. Warm hand to warm hand. I saw you falling, so I'm helping. So I'm curious. In small groups, perhaps you begin with what your experience was in the falling, noticing the falling.